Hello friends and welcome to this beginner-friendly soft pastel tutorial. Thank you for joining me. Today we are creating this peaceful landscape with a mountain, purple clouds and the moon. I will also be talking about different types of pastels in this video and about some risks involved in using pastels often. So keep watching to learn more about this wonderful art medium. Without further ado, let's get into it. For this soft pastel painting, you will need paper. I'm using Fabriano Tiziano 160 grams per square meter in warm grey. This isn't actual pastel paper, but works for multiple art mediums. If you have pastel paper, such as pastel mat, use that, as blending will be a lot easier. If you don't have pastel paper, use a bit thicker paper or card. To follow this tutorial, you need to have soft pastels. Oil pastels or hard pastels won't work similarly, so if you want to follow the tutorial, soft pastels is the way to go. If you have oil pastels and still want to follow this tutorial, remember that blending them is a bit different. I'm using these soft pastels from Faber-Castell and these artist's quality soft pastels from Rembrandt. However, you don't have to buy these high-end brands to create this painting. I have used cheaper Derwent's soft pastels in the past, and they would work fine for this as well. However, with cheaper pastels, you might need more layers and a bit more blending to achieve the same effect. And for more layers, you need thicker paper. Please don't stress about it. It's art, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I will also be using some cotton buds and I have tissue paper around me in case I want to wipe my fingers. I will be blending with my fingers and washing my hands multiple times during this tutorial. You will also need a white gel pen or acrylic paint at the end. Okay, let's start off by sketching. I'm using white pastel block to roughly sketch out the edges of the mountains. I'm somewhat following my reference photo and sketching the light and dark areas of the mountains. You don't have to be precise, as mountains can have many natural shapes. This is just to guide us when we create the sky. Alright, let the fun begin. Next we are moving on to the sky and clouds. I'm starting with the base of the clouds, which is going to be pink. I'm not going straight to purple because I want the clouds to have a pink undertone. So I'm very loosely sketching the clouds with this lovely pink pigment. There will be a moon in the middle, so I'm going around the center. I want the clouds to be very soft and dreamy. Next, with white, let's sketch in the moon. You can use some tool to help you achieve the perfect circle if you'd like. Next, I'm pressing the pigment onto the paper with my fingers for both the moon and the clouds. Then I'm taking this very rich blue and adding it near the mountains. I want the sky to have a slightly lighter blue tone near the mountaintops, as if the night didn't quite reach there yet. I'm setting it in with my fingers. Then I'm taking this darker rich blue and adding it everywhere else on the sky around the clouds and moon. I will speed up the video a bit here, so please pause the video after seeing what I'm doing. Leave a bit room around the moon and press the pigment in with your fingers or other blending tool. Okay, I'm adding white on top of the pink clouds to tone down the color a bit. Notice how I keep the white close to the center of the painting and leave the edges alone for now. I'm then taking the black from my Rembrandt pastels, which is a super deep black and has insane amounts of pigment, truly the best black I've ever seen. I'm adding it near the edges at the top and blending it in. If you're using cheaper soft pastels, you might need to add more color to the area before blending it. Next, I'm finally moving on to the beautiful purple. I'm adding that on the clouds, but only on the outer parts of them, as you can see. This is because I want the clouds to be lighter and glowy near the moon. You know this by now, blend it in with your fingers or other tool of your choice. After that, let's make the sky a bit deeper color. First, let's add some black, but don't apply too close to the mountains. Before blending, let's add dark indigo blue. This way, the two colors blend effortlessly and create this wonderful deep blue tone. Then, let's add some of that darker blue close to the mountains. Now it doesn't look as dark because the top part has black mixed in. Please pause the video to keep up. I have to speed up the footage, otherwise this video would be 1.5 hours long. If you're interested, I can also create some full-time tutorials. Let me know in the comments. Finally, let's add white around the moon and blend it really well. I want the moon to have a really nice glow. Next steps are really up to you, and I'll speed up the footage. Let's add more and more layers. First, with purple to the clouds, I'm adding some more pink as well. These are just completely up to you because we already applied the base for everything on the sky. You can add as many layers as you want. Always remember that white will really tone down the saturation of your colors. So if you want the colors to pop, don't use as much white. Yours can end up looking quite different from mine, and that's totally okay, because clouds can have many different shapes. Oh, but for this part I'd like you to pay attention to. I'm adding the edges of the clouds. This will really make a big difference. With white, I'm gently shaping the cloud's edges near the moon and gently blending it. I'm doing this a couple times to find the desired effect. You can experiment a bit, it's really fun. I'm using a cotton bud to make the slightest blending effects. Finally, let's define the moon a little with white, and with that, we're done with the sky for now. Okay, let's move on to the bottom half of our painting, the mountains. They look intimidating, but are quite fun. Let's start with dark grey to sketch in shadows. I made a mistake here from the very beginning. Fix it in yours. My reference photo didn't have a moon at all, so the lighting was actually different. Only later I realized that for this part I can't follow my reference because the moon would light up the top part of the mountain and the right side would have some shadows. Luckily, with pastels, it's easy to fix this mistake. Anyway, with very loose, sketchy strokes, let's add the shadows and do the same for light. I'm using white at first. This is just to set the contrast on the mountains. For my piece, I want to have straight, harsh edges on the mountains to balance out the softness of the clouds. Let's add some dark brown to soften and warm the cold mountain, and some light grey to blend the light areas. I'd like to talk about reference pictures for a bit. I found this beautiful reference picture from Pixabay, where you can find copyright-free pictures to use as your references. Not sponsored, but I think it's a really great source for artists. Remember that Pinterest isn't a source for references. I mean, you can of course find inspiration from Pinterest, but you can't use any images from there without the permission of the owner of the picture. However, there are multiple sites online where you can find copyright-free photos for free. I like Pixabay. If you'd like to know more about copyright, you can check online or let me know in the comments and I'll talk about it in a future video. Okay, back to the painting. Let's add white to the edges of the mountain and inside it. This will define all the cracks and falls and edges of the formations in the mountain. This is really relaxing and you can be really creative with this. Have some fun! This step is again similar to when we did layers for the sky. It's really up to you. You can work on this as long as you like, but remember to stop at some point. I'm adding more dark to the shadows and more definition to the light with greys and browns. This is also the point where I switched the shadow more on the right side of the mountain when I realized I made a mistake earlier. For my piece, I think I blended the mountains a bit too much, so they ended up a bit softer than what I wanted. But you can do whatever you like for yours. Let's talk about pastel blocks and pencils quickly, since this is a beginner-friendly tutorial. There are different types of pastel blocks and pencils, and it can be a bit confusing at times. First, let's talk about soft pastels. Soft pastels are the traditional pastel blocks. They crumble easily and create a lot of dust, and working with them is quite messy. This is because the soft pastel has high pigment and it's held together with only a little bit of binder. Soft pastels are very easy to blend and layer and work really well for large areas. However, they are not great for small details. Please remember that soft pastels are powdery and create small dust all over when you're working with them. It's not recommended to breathe in the pastel dust. Some pigments or binders may contain toxic ingredients, so it's best to be mindful of this. Either work in a well-ventilated area or outdoors. If you work indoors, avoid blowing off the excess pastel dust and instead tip over your paper and let the dust fall off. Clean the table and floor well with water. It would be best to take your painting outside and tap off the excess dust there. A good idea is to also wear a high-quality dust mask if you use soft pastels often. Hard pastels are the same as soft pastels, but they have way more binder and a lot less pigment. This means that their color isn't as intensive and easy to blend, but the stick doesn't crumble easily. With hard pastels, you don't have to worry as much about the pastel dust. Hard pastels aren't quite as beginner-friendly as soft pastels, in my opinion at least, but they work much better for small details. You can also find pastels in pencil form, which is my favorite. They blend easily, can be used super well for small details, and you have much more control over the movement. I love to use them for quick sketches of people, but also for finished portraits. For example, animal portraits. But pastel pencils obviously don't work well for large areas. Lastly, let's talk about oil pastels. Oil pastels are very different from the others I've mentioned, as their binder is oil. The oil pastels don't crumble or release dust, so they are safer to use. They have very intense colors. They have a very waxy consistency and their strokes are somewhat buttery. The downside is that blending oil pastels takes more effort than soft pastels. They also can't be combined with other mediums. This means adding details is also more difficult. So it's really up to you which type of pastel you like best. Soft pastels are more versatile, but can cause a health risk if not used correctly. Oil pastels are safer, but don't blend as well. Hard pastels are also harder to blend. Pastel pencils have the best side of soft pastels, but are difficult and tedious to use on large areas. I would also like to talk about blending pastels. I know some of you might be horrified about me blending this with my fingers. Maybe you can hear your art teacher screaming. Well, let's talk about this. First of all, if you do blend with your fingers, remember to wash your hands extremely well before eating anything or touching your clothes, etc., as soft pastel dust will get everywhere and ruin your clothes or your health. Well, the biggest issue with blending with your fingers is that the oil from your fingers will dull the pigment a bit. It can also weaken the binder of the pigment or the paper. Some artists really dislike this, as they enjoy the bright pigments and the sketchy feel the pastels have when you don't use blending tools or fingers. However, I personally enjoy blending the most, and I love the smooth color transitions and that's what I want to create. Feel free to leave your creations less blended if you'd like. My other defense for blending with my fingers is that it saves time. Blending with a tissue paper or other blending tool, such as the blending sticks from Pan Pastel, can lift off a lot of the pigment off the paper. I always feel like I have to then add so many more layers. So for me, I blend with my fingers and the help of a cotton bud. You can do as you find best suited for you. If you don't blend with your fingers, then I recommend wearing protective gloves every time you paint, especially with soft pastels. Finally, for the last step, you will need a white gel pen. You could also use white acrylic paint. First, I'm outlining the moon to really make it pop. Then, let's add stars. Let's add lots and lots of stars. You can add as many as you'd like. Add them everywhere, but avoid the purple and pink areas of the clouds. The white areas can be a bit see-through. You can do this however you like. Enjoy the moment. Finally, sign in your name and date, and you're done. Thank you so much for joining me for this moment of creating art, my friend. I'm sure your creation turned out amazing. I'd love to see it. So if you'd like, you can send a picture of it to me on Instagram at marjoannika_arts. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye!